All right, guys, we got an easy edit here. Nothing much to do. Just a simple crop that stuff out, maybe crop it out or just white it out, and then clean up this left side of the image. I do wish in hindsight I would have left a little bit more of that one in, but I didn't, so what are you going to do, right? So we'll crop that out. We'll make it start right on that side there. Come in a little bit off of this side there. I'd like to try and get it so this is coming in right out of the corner as much as possible. That's the goal there. Okay, so this is going to be easy. Watch, we just lift the highlights, lift the whites, make sure that background goes nice and pure white. If we view it against white like that, you can see there's no edge. You can't see the edge. It blends away to nothing. Whereas, watch, if I start it down here like that, or even like, let's see, there. See how you can start to see the edge, right? So you don't want that. You want to just leave it where it's nice and bright. Oops. The highlights up, the whites up, and you can't see an edge at all. Okay? By the way, you press S. S is in... What is a good S word? I don't know. We'll just go with S as in rubber stamp tool. Anyway, you press S, and that switches you into proof mode, which gives you a white background. And then you just press S again. It toggles you back out. Anyway, here's the important part, right? Now, I want to see a lot more detail and color on the bird and everything else on there. So shadows is it. So watch, we lift the shadows till it's a good point. In fact, we can zoom in on it. So watch, we'll lift the shadows up a bunch. But then the key is you got to drop the blacks to maintain that contrast. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. Also, this could go a little bit warmer just to get a little bit more tone in there. And then we can give it a little pop of saturation, right? So look at that. Bright greens, bright yellow. And then I'm going to grab the healing brush over here, and we'll just paint over this whole ugly out of focus thing that's coming into there. Let it take it from somewhere else, and then just clean it up white. Nice and easy. All right, make sure none of that stuff, nothing back there is blown out. I think we're good to go. Into Photoshop we go. Not really anything else to do to it here in Photoshop, I would say. Other than this, let's actually darken down the branches and some of these green areas. So I put on a curve like this. Watch this, and here's the key. Check this out. Look, I can go, wait, let me invert that. I can mash this as dark as I want, and all it's going to do is silhouette this, which, by the way, that's pretty kind of cool, right? Wow, I actually like this a lot. I might do a version of this silhouetted as well. It's just got cool shape. Anyway, when you have a pure white background, you can darken everything as much as you want, and that background won't go white or gray. The only thing that would do that is if I actually take the white point down. Okay, so that's a good indicator that it is pure white. So I can put a point on this anywhere I want and darken things. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to invert that mask. So Command I, so it's not affecting anything. We'll grab the paintbrush. Hang on, let me turn on my tablet here. So we'll grab the paintbrush tool over here. Make sure we're painting with white. Big soft brush, lower opacity. And then watch, any of these areas that just feel a little light, and mainly it's like this. I wanted those... these branches to just be a little bit darker. I don't have to be even remotely accurate, by the way. You just paint them because you can't make the white background any darker, If any of these little greens are like too light for your taste, you can just hit them a little bit and then you're good to go. All right, we'll come into the bird here. We'll do another curves adjustment layer. Lighten that up a bit like that. Invert it. Small brush, we're just looking to slightly lighten the yellows there. Probably not back there, just more on the front and the head there. And then maybe just a little bit more something in the eye. Not that we're going to see it in this whole shot. There we go. That's version number 1. I'm going to save that and close it. We're going to go back to the raw file and make version number 2 because I do think there was something pretty damn cool about that silhouette version. So let's go. Here's the raw file. I'm going to make a virtual copy of it. Let's see if I can get the shortcut right. I think it's that one. Hey, I got it right. Okay, so highlights up, whites are staying up. We want to make sure we keep that white background. But watch, shadows down, blacks down, just to the max. And we're still not getting a full silhouette there. So let's see. If we drop that, now that starts bringing tone into the background. So we want to keep that brighter. How can we make it darker? We don't need any saturation. We can do let's see. Watch this. Select range, color range. Oh no, luminance range. Let's do that. And we're gonna get the overlay on, and I think we just drag out, nope, this side. This side comes in. And we just drag away all that white. We'll bring that all down here. And then we basically just have the black stuff selected. So watch, we'll expand that until just everything dark there is selected. Get rid of the overlay and simply just drop the exposure on it. And now everything should be, yeah, look at that, nice and black. No detail showing anywhere, but we have that pure white background everywhere else. And if anything on the global edit here, we can just punch those whites up even more just to make sure we have that pure white. There we go. There's our silhouette. So we will edit that in Photoshop just so I can get a different version of it saved. I don't need to do any edits on this, so I will simply just save it as a Photoshop document, and now I have two. So let's reset this image. Oh wait, that's the edited Photoshop file. Where's the raw file? Here we go. So we'll reset that one. We don't need this copy anymore, so we'll just reject that. And there we go. There's our original. Here's our high key edit, and here's our silhouette edit. I'll be curious to know which one you prefer, because I gotta say, there's something cool about both of them, right? All right, fun. Not where I was expecting to go, but accidentally playing around with an image by showing you guys something with that curve is what led me to this. I never thought to do that with this image. So, sometimes playing around helps. Yeah. All right, this one's really cool. I like this a lot. I'm going to leave everything here a little bit lighter. And basically, I'm just going to do a subject select on this bird. So everything else is looking pretty good. We'll do a subject select. Hopefully, it grabs some of that perch as well. It grabbed the entire thing. That's great. And we're going to do dehaze. Lighten it a little. So lighten it, hit it with more dehaze, drop the blacks a little, and we have to get rid of some red. There's like some red showing up in there, so I'm going to cool off the white balance. Maybe just a little bit lighter. There we go. Zoom in on that bird. That's looking great on the bird. The branch looks nice. The branch feels a little dark, so I'm just going to subtract a linear off of this just to kind of fade it like that. And then we're good. I do feel like there's a little bit of green coming in on the bird there. So let's mess with the bird here a little bit. We'll do an object select, paint over the bird. Boy, we got great detail on him, huh? So there, hopefully that gives us our bird. We will throw this towards the magenta side just a little bit, but then we'll subtract out a linear off the top half of the bird here, like this front half, because he was not needing it there. And then lastly, the one other thing I want to do, I'm going to see if the object select will do this for me. Let's go small here. It's basically just this black eye line and the bill. Yes, perfect. All right, so watch. Highlights up, whites up, lift the exposure up a little bit, and then really drop those blacks. And then also desaturate. There we go. Now it's nice and rich. Look at that. So we went from there to there. That's the contrast we wanted to kind of pop through there, you know? Nice. I don't know. I'm just going to darken this. I just want to see what happens here. Yeah, maybe we can do like a radial gradient right in there. Darken that. Not that much. Drop the highlights maybe. Warm it a little bit more green. Yeah, it's not helping that much. Yeah, I guess it did a little bit. It's just a little too dark though. Yeah, we're just going to leave it like that. Into Photoshop we go. You know what? I'm actually going to come back to here. I'm going to close that. Don't save it. There's just a little bit too much contrast on that bird. So watch. I'm just going to back off the amount of that dehaze slider thing to right about there. There we go. That feels better. It was just, yeah, it's just a bit much. So into Photoshop we go now. Listen, I don't love these really bright spots like that. So if I want, I can do a new blank layer. We get a big clone stamp tool, and then we just kind of paint some of that over them. You know, we can kind of fill it in a little bit like that giant spot, but I don't know. That's looking kind of stupid. Delete it. We'll just leave it. It's fine. It's just not worth the fix on it. I don't have much else to do on this one. I just want to pop that catch light a little bit and then see if I can get the black eye line just a little bit darker around it. So first curve adjustment layer, lighten things up, invert that, zoom in, nice tiny paintbrush, paint with white, and we catch that catch light right there. And then the next curve adjustment layer we're going to do, nice and easy, we're going to grab the black point, just drop it. We're going to invert that, and then we're going to hit this area back here, part of the eye line. We're going to do the outline of the eye, the dark part of the eye, a little bit of space, and then we'll hit this black eye line right there. And then we'll do the entire bill here, get that nice and dark as well. Another adjustment layer, hue and saturation this time. I'm just going to jack the saturation down to almost nothing, and then we'll just paint with some white on these parts of the bird just to kind of get rid of some of that little bit of green wash that was coming over it. There we go. Now we have a nice rich eye line. Watch this, before, after. See how it just kind of cleaned that up there a little bit? The blue wings are showing nicely. I love the texture and the foreground that we're shooting through there. Again, I wish I had a little bit more there, but it was blotchy in the background, only so much you can do. I still really like that shot. We'll save it and close it. We'll compare the total before and after. Basically, what we should just see is that bird's going to stand out a lot more and pop out of the scene better than it did in the original shot. And then we're good to go. All right. So here we'll hit that raw file, reset it. Yeah, it's just nothing major, you know, but watch from there to there. See how much better that bird stands out? And we did tone that down just a little bit. That's a fun shot. I'm happy with it. Baltimore Oriole, high key. This one definitely has to be a high key because, watch, if we silhouette it, look, the bird has no shape, just a lump. He's all stupid. So definitely got to high key this one. So we're going highlights up, whites up just a touch, make sure it's nice and white, and then here's where we get our exactly what we're after. Lift those shadows a bunch. Drop the blacks for contrast. That's good that we can see the eye in there. The color's a little too cool, so I'm going to warm it up a little bit more greens, a little tad magenta. There we go. I'm not sure if I like these additional layers there, if I just want the one thing swooping in. Also, it looks like the outer edge there is catching a little red, so it must not have been pure white. So I'm just going to, see, I want to punch up these whites a little bit more, but it's kind of going too crazy on the perch there. So watch, we'll just do create a new mask, linear. We'll just drop it in on this side, just lift up the exposure and just white out that bottom corner. Then we'll press S on the keyboard, make sure we're clean white all the way around all the edges. We are. So we'll press S again and get it toggled back. Into Photoshop we go. I am just going to play around with losing all of these, some of these, and just see which makes the most sense. So here we are in Photoshop. I'm just going to make a new blank layer. And it may be leaving all of them, definitely not this out of focus one, right? So let's just grab a paintbrush. I'm just going to grab a hard edge brush here. We're going to paint with pure white. And watch, we'll get rid of that. That one's going for sure. So now we just need to determine is what I'm trying to say. Do we want none of them? Or some of them? What do you think? That's pretty clean there. But that gives a little bit more, I don't know. I think I like it just totally clean. Just coming into there. And then we can crop this thing however the heck we want. Although I kind of like that crop as that space. Just coming in there, a little bit of nice white space out there. I would maybe even at that point crop in further. So we'll just do that in Lightroom after the fact so that way I don't have to decide in Photoshop and make it more permanent. The eye is showing really well. Guys, there's nothing else. I don't have anything else to edit on this one. It's showing really well. Nice clean white background. I'm going to save that. Let's go back into Lightroom, play around with some cropping, and see what we think is going to work. I might just want to come in tighter actually on the whole damn thing and make it so that it's kind of like filling out the frame a little bit more, you know, something like that. He's kind of centered then though, but it's all about the perch. And the perch just angling through the frame, I don't know. It's tough. And we could do something like that too. A little bit more space. Speaking of which, it's really funny. There's Baltimore Orioles singing right outside of my van now. Yeah, I don't know. I gotta say, I think I like more space. I almost want to play, what's vertical look like if it just comes in like that? I think that works the best. I like that. It just feels like a good layout. You know what? I want more space above it though. So now that I know what crop I want on that, I'm just going to reset it here, edit the original in Photoshop, and then I can play with the crop that I want there. So we'll grab the crop tool. We're just going to hit enter the crop there, hit X to switch the orientation of that crop, and then watch, we're just going to space it out up here like that. I just want him a little bit lower. I like having, I think I want the space above, although I don't know. Let's try if he's looking down, because he is looking down to the frame. No, that feels super weird. That feels better. Maybe not that far. There we go. I like that a lot. Save it. Done. Yeah, this one was not an obvious one with how I wanted it cropped. But yeah, I think that's going to work quite nicely. So there we go. Finished image on that one. Okay, continuing right along with this high key series. All right, on this one, I'm looking to just minimize some of these extra little branches and sticks. Probably that big one up there that's just kind of annoying. And then we're just going to go lighter high key with the bird, but not the main tree trunks. Because, watch, if I lift the shadows up on that, it just brings way more attention to all of them. So I actually want to keep all of those things a little bit darker. Other than the bird, we're going to make the bird stand out. So first things first, on these high keys, I usually just punch up the highlights, punch up the whites, make sure I get a nice clean white in that background. Let's play with the crop just a little bit. I do like that split at the top there, right there in the middle. And then I like the leaves down here. So there, I'm happy with that. That kind of cleaned those things up. We're going to do a radial. We're going to do 2 radials. So first radial, big, and I would say around here like that. We're going to invert it, and then we're going to drop the no, not the exposure, the shadows. There, whoop, too far, subtle with that. So we'll drop the shadows a bit, and then maybe the highlights just a bit. No, I don't want to drop the highlights a bit, because then I don't want a chance making it gray in the background there. So yeah, just dropping that shadows was good, because it just kind of de-emphasizes those tree trunks. And you know what? Let's desaturate just a touch. Nah, I don't like that actually. I like the color that was there. Another radial now. We'll put it right around the bird there. We'll zoom in, and this one's going lighter exposure. Lift those shadows up. There's our bird. Drop the blacks for contrast. Give him a little pop of saturation. There we go. Bird standing out nicely on that branch. Now, check that out. Look at that branch fade. It's super weird. So let's go back to that mask. Let's drag this out a little bit. You know what? We're just going to subtract with a brush. There we go. And bigger brush here. A little bit lower on the flow. A little bit more on the feather. And we're just going to take off that lightning on the branch there. So we're doing a subtract here. And a little bit off the bottom there. A little too much. One pass. Maybe a pass on the wing there or two. Something like that. There we go. That looks more natural. I just didn't want that branch to look weirdly spotlit right there. The bird can be lit. The branch, not so much. All right, I think that's it. Into Photoshop we go with that one. All right. New blank layer. Let's clean up some of these extra branches that we don't want. So again, we're going to start with the paintbrush. A little bit harder edge brush. I'm going to paint with white. So make sure white is your foreground color, 100%. And we're just going to paint out these things we don't want. Because we just have a nice white background, it's as easy as doing that. So we just want to be careful along these edges here and make sure we're doing that clean so we're not making any weird edges or artifacts wherever we're getting close to existing branches and tree trunks that we want to leave, right? That branch is all fine. All that's good. All that's good. It's a little bit of a mess right in there. I'm fine with the one kicking out there. I just don't want this extra one in the background. I'm just looking to simplify this scene. That's what I'm trying to do here. So smaller brushes, get down in there, and then you can use a little bit bigger brush to make sure you're covering the whole area there. That's good. And it's more these like out of focus ones too. I don't like them as much for whatever reason. That's fine. This one's just extra, don't need. So I'm just randomly determining what I want and what I don't want now. A little bit of busyness due to that one. That's got to go for sure. All those ghosty branches up there, over here as well. These little nubs sticking out aren't adding anything, so we'll get rid of those. Extra ghosty branch there, up there. Oops, that was a bad paint there. So we need a softer edge brush now here because that hard edge wasn't actually matching up there. So we'll go back to our roughly 80% hardness for this because that is sharp. There we go, and we're good, we're good. You know what, these out of focus leaves aren't adding anything there either. Let's get rid of that. Come in with a softer edge brush now. And then we can do that edge so it looks natural and matches what we have going. So there we go. Look at that. Much more simplified. Watch. Before, after. See, it's just a lot of that extra junk is gone, and it feels a little bit cleaner now overall. I am going to do a burn curves layer here, so we'll darken that just a little bit more. Invert that mask. Command-I, Control-I on Windows. And then we're just going to paint with our brush, paint with white, lower opacity here, maybe like a 40-50, something like that. And you just kind of just hit some of these tree trunks a little bit where they're getting a little bit lighter, and I want to keep things a little darker and heavier, so that way the only sort of orange that stands out here is our bird. And then lastly, on our bird, I think we can do a curves adjustment layer, drop the black point on it just to get some of the black parts of this bird a little bit more rich. So like this back area right here. So I'm painting with white, and then those black values, maybe even the tail, can use some of that. And there we go. That's our final image right there. Our bird stands out quite nicely. I wish he wasn't kind of slightly looking away, but that curved branch that he's perched on is really fun. He's spaced out nicely in there. And yeah, you know, it's not my favorite image, but it works. They can't all be the favorite, you know? Let me make sure I save that. I thought I did, but maybe I didn't. Let's let that finish, and then we'll just kind of compare the before and after on that. Shouldn't be too major of a change, but the bird should stand out quite a bit more, and we're going to see a lot more detail on the bird because it was a little bit more of a silhouette to begin with. And look how much more the tree trunks kind of stand out and take precedence in the original versus the final, where that bird just stands out and the tree trunks sort of recede back there just due to the darkness, right? So that's it. Subtle lightening and darkening, saturating, desaturating to make our subject stand out when it's small in frame. I know. One more high key, but this is the last of the high key, I promise, on this particular outing. Let's crop it. I do want to let that branch come in right from the corner there. I don't know that I like those leaves there, so I might get rid of those. And here's the other thing to determine, like what? There's actually there's a little bit of blue tone back there. I don't know if I like that or if I want to just go kind of blast it out and let it go pure white in the background, you know? I can't really decide. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about it. Yeah, I think I will go white with it. So we'll just lighten that. We're going to lift those shadows a little bit, get more detail in there, drop the blacks for contrast. Let's punch up the whites just a little bit more. And then this whole section up here, I'm just going to kind of paint that out in Photoshop. But let's see. So look, we're not pure white everywhere yet. So let's try this. We're going to do a mask. We're going to do a color range. We'll click right there. Press O, hold shift and click right there. And then one more shift and click right in there. Should connect everything. Then it looks pretty good. We just need to subtract an object because it looks like some of that grabbed our bird there. Can't tell if it's a little highlighted, but let's get rid of any highlight off of that bird. And now we should be good to go to just lift the exposure up, punch up those whites. I'll press S on the keyboard to see that preview, and look at that nice and pure white around the edges now. And then we can just paint these things out in Photoshop with white, and I think we'll be pretty good. There's not much else to do. You know what? Overall, we went a little bright with the whites there because like those whites were starting to overexpose. So I'm going to drop that and the highlights just a little bit. Oops, sorry about that. And then I just want to make sure we're still pure white in the background, which it looks like we are. All right, so now we'll go into Photoshop. And a nice easy fix on this one. New blank layer. Grab that paintbrush. Hard edge brush. We're just going to paint with white. I am going to get rid of a couple of those little branches, or those leaves there. And then, yeah, we'll just paint all that with white. Everything else looks pure white, so I think we're good there. And then I do want to go back to that softer brush for painting. We're going to do a curves adjustment layer, punch that up a little bit, drop those blacks for contrast, invert that mask so it's not affecting anything. So Command I, Control I on Windows. We'll go a little bit brighter there, a little bit brighter in the head there and on the eye, maybe across the wings, a little bit on the bird, a little bit on the leaves right near him there, and these fun little seeds. And there we go. We're done with that one. Nice high key, Eastern Kingbird on a fun perch. That's the key with these two, right? These branches have to be just right. They got to be pretty. They have to have character to them. I love the spring growth coming off of them. They can't be too busy, you know. So if we look at all of these high key ones so far, I would argue that this one's like the least pleasing perch, but really fun, really fun, really fun. You know, just open, got nice green sprouts on it. These have the dangly fun seeds. These have little tiny seeds on it as well. This one just also has really beautiful warm golden early sunlight coming in on it. So all of that helping. I'll reset this original and we'll compare. So listen, it's not the worst with the bluish background there, but there's something that just cleans it up with the white. So I don't know. I just kind of prefer that, I guess, over just the plain blue sky. So there's that final image. And then on to something not high key. All right, we got a non-bird here. Man, can you believe I composed it that close to the edge, though? Come on, Ray. What the hell? All right, I love this scene as a whole. We're going to really just sort of try and spotlight this deer, though. I'm going to crop in just a little bit off of that, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to do, let's see, first off, white balance. I think I could use just a little bit less magenta on the deer, and I do like this cool morning vibe to it. So we'll go with the cooler white balance, but we'll warm the deer back up. Let's start with a radial gradient. Big radial right there, invert, and this is what's going to really help us. We're going to darken it a lot. And I'm actually going to feather this up just a little bit less to make sure, see how that encroaches on the deer, and then that kind of spreads it out. But there's almost sort of a natural vignette there to begin with, so that helps things out a lot. All right, let's do another radial. Big soft one this time, feather it to the max, and then we'll drop that whole area up there. We want to darken that. I'm going to cool it off even just a little bit more, just a few points, something like that. Now we'll do an object select, and we'll see if we can get both the actual deer and its reflection. So we'll do one at a time here. We got that. Yeah, good. And then we're going to add another object. Come down here and see if it can grab that reflection pretty well. We'll probably do less on the reflection, but there we go. Good. All right, so first thing I want to do is warm it up like that. I'm going to brighten it up just a bit, then drop the blacks for contrast. And again, we'll go with that little bit of warmer. I mean, I think actually I really like how the reflection followed there, so I think we're done. There we go. That's great. So that's what I wanted, right? I wanted that color contrast, look, before, after, to really draw you in there. Now, normally, I feel like you can't get away with darkening all of these trees as much as I did, but I think it works and feels natural because of this. I shot through some foreground stuff here, and you can see it obviously right here because it's hiding the entirety of the water, and you can see it sort of creep up there, and it's basically just going to look like that's more of it. Like I'm shooting through some filtered foreground stuff that's darkening all of this, and there's a nice opening right here, which is where I'm seeing the brightest part of the image through there, which happens to be the deer. So that's how I think I can get away with going from that to that in the edit. All right, so let's go into Photoshop with this. And I got to say, now that it's edited like this, the offset doesn't feel as bad. I still wish I had more space behind his butt there. I'm kind of annoyed that I got that close with it, but I don't know what happened there. I was probably just paying attention to including all of this stuff and then didn't notice how close I got to putting him right on the edge there. All right, I'm going to darken it even a little bit more. invert that mask with the Command I, Control I for Windows. Big soft brush, painting with white. We'll hit a little bit there, a little bit there, and then just a little bit that top one there. Okay, and I mean, damn, I think we're about done here. Maybe I'll just hit the deer and that area with a little contrast. So another curves adjustment layer. We'll lift up the highlights, drop the shadows, invert that mask. We'll just paint it in right in that area. Make things punch up a little bit more. And there we go. We are done. So let's close and save that one. We'll look at the total before and after. A nice big change there, especially with how I darkened everything else over here. But look at this. It looks and feels realistic. That's the key to me of making a shot like this work. I'm going to show you real quick just a rough edit. Watch, if I were to do this, right, and just put a big radial there, invert it, and then just really darken it. Like if I did something like that, that feels kind of false to me. Like that's just way too far, you know? And I got to say, I totally understand that some of you may think what I did in my final edit here is way too far, you know, going from that to that. But for me, and everybody gets to choose their own, right? It's how far are you willing to push an image without feeling like you have to say anything. And I actually may even say in the caption, if I share a photo like this, you know, hey, I shot through some foreground, but it didn't darken the top right enough, and so I darkened it a little bit in post to make the deer stand out. Like, I think that's kind of an important thing to share when I'm sharing a photo like this, because I gotta say, this almost captures more attention up here than the deer does itself. Not quite, but damn near. Whereas here, it doesn't capture any attention. The deer is the full focus of the image. And I do like the color shift there as well. So that's that one. Let's try the next one. Okay, for this one, it's a bit more straightforward. We don't have any foreground shooting through, but there is just a fun, nice mood to this. I don't know. I still think I kind of want to go back to the cooler, at least cooler in the water. Maybe we'll split the image, make the bottom half cooler because it's like that blue water reflection, and then we'll leave the top half warm in that warmer sun. But we are going to still try and darken these areas and then bring out the deer a little bit. It looks really nice and level. I actually completely dig this composition where it's at. I don't think I want to change a thing. So let's start with a linear gradient. So we'll create a new linear gradient right there. We're going to darken it just a bit down there, and then we'll cool it off just a bit, right? Look at that. We make it look like a little bit more blue down there. Next linear gradient, create another one up top here, and we're going to just drop that in off that top half there, and we're just going to minimize the brightness on those bushes along the top edge there. Mainly, let's drop the highlights a bit and the whites a bit, something like that. So now we have this nice bright section right along there. And then lastly, let's just object select this deer, and we're going to brighten him up out of there. And then we will, I guess we can let the reflection get a little bit of it there. It's kind of cool how it fades with that fog. That fog was hanging just on the surface of the water. You didn't really see it nearly as much until you got down that low. All right, so watch. Lighten him. It's a bit much. We'll drop the blacks for contrast. Warm him up so he's getting that nice warm color, a little bit less magenta. And then subtract with a linear off the bottom so those legs sort of just fade with the brightness there. And let's see, how's that feel? Probably just a bit much on the deer there, so let's back that off just a tad. I'll just back off the exposure lift a little bit. There we go. That feels better. Before, after. Yep, just a subtle dodging and burning. We'll take it into Photoshop to save it, but I don't feel like there's anything else to really do. You know, I guess I can do a little bit more burn across some areas. So curves adjustment layer. Darken that down, Command I, Control I on Windows to invert it. Make sure we're on our paintbrush, white as the foreground color there. And then we'll just kind of just darken some of these brighter spots up here, especially on this edge. And then maybe just a little light opacity right through here in those lighter areas. But I do love that sort of muted, smeared reflection, especially when it gets into there in those grasses. It's really, really cool when you get that low to the water. But man, it starts to get pretty darn clear right there. That was a calm morning. Yeah, nice. All right, close and save. And we'll just do a quick comparison from before and after on this one. But I don't think we're going to see a major change. We basically already saw it. I didn't do a lot of change in Photoshop. Just a nice, quick, easy edit on this one. Come on, computer, say if you can do it. There we go. Let's go over to the original. We'll reset that. Nice change, right? Look how much more the deer stands out. Before, after. All right, we got this cool behavior from this female Baltimore oriole. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the composition, so I'm going to play around with that a bunch. I also don't know how much of these other additional sticks I want to remove, or if I just want to leave it. I don't know if it's worth all the effort. And then maybe just a little bit darker on the background, pop the bird up, make the bird stand out a little bit more. That's the goal. I do kind of like the lighter grasses down here, though. Compositionally, this side I think is just killing me there. But if I come in off of that too much, I don't know, it's starting to feel a little... I mean, that's not bad right there. Yeah, that kind of brings us in on the scene. Cleans out a lot of the extra junk around it. My other thought was to go vertical, but I really like these grasses, and I like including more of them. So I think what I'll do is actually just do a little bit more cleanup on some of these sticks in Photoshop. So next thing, warm up the white balance a little bit less magenta. As always, all that green throws off the auto white balance a good bit. So lift up the exposure tiny. Actually, I didn't even move it. Whatever, we'll leave it. Lift up the shadows. Drop those blacks for contrast. Let's also do a subject select. Actually, I'm going to go object again just because I don't want it to grab anything else but the bird. So we'll grab the bird there. That was a very inaccurate painting around it, but should work. Should get close enough to it. Yeah, look at that. It's the best. All right, lift up that exposure. Lift up those shadows even more. Drop those blacks. Maintain the contrast. And as I usually do, I'm going to subtract a linear off the bottom here. And then we'll just kind of let the bottom of the bird sort of fade in there. So now we've gone from that to that. It definitely makes the bird stand out more. Let's try a background select and see what that does, number one. Okay, pretty good. And ever so slightly, let's darken it to make that bird stand out. There we go. So before, after. Yeah, we sort of switched around the lighting on that to make the bird just a little bit brighter, kind of de-emphasize that background. All right, into Photoshop we go. And now it's going to be a determination of like how much are we going to do here and how easy is it going to be. So new blank layer. Let's get started with this little guy over here. I'm going to start with the spot healing brush right there. Make sure it's on content aware and sample all layers because we are working on a blank layer. So oversize the brush. Also, I always keep that brush at hardness, yeah, basically 100%. And we're just going to paint over that. It's looking good. It does leave some weird artifacts. Let's see what it does with that piece of grass there. Yeah, it got weird. But it should be pretty good right through all that. Not bad. All right, so now before I leave it, going back to the clone tool here, much smaller brush. We do want to make sure we're on sample all layers up there. And so watch, we're going to sample right above here and paint that down. Sample below, paint that up. From below, I'm just following the angles of everything here. So wherever I went through and it got weird is where I want to fix it. So see how I'm following this grass sort of up there, and then we'll just leave that blade kind of fading there. Then there's some weird artifacts right there. We'll fade that. Sampling from basically each side where there was those weird transitional areas, you know. Trying to see if there's anywhere else, maybe just right in there. That's looking pretty good. Okay, this is all part of what the bird was actually gathering, so we definitely want to leave that. This is the other major stick that I'm not liking, that really bright one. This one, I don't mind it so much at all over there, but this one's kind of driving me nuts here. So I'm going to start with the clone stamp tool down in here because from experience, I don't think the spot healing brush is going to work that well. So I'm going to sample there, and we'll take that line. I'm just drawing a little bit and let go, a little bit, let go. Lower opacity is helpful in there. We'll sample under here, get rid of that. And then we're going to sample all the way up there and then just bring that down in here and paint that in. Sample right there and angle that. And then I'm going to fade that. So we'll sample in from underneath there and softly, again, low opacity. I'm just going across with low opacity over and over again just so I can kind of get these things to sort of blend and fade together here is what I'm trying to do. So sample a little bit bigger brush. We'll come in from underneath here. And then we'll come in from above and kind of meet those two in the middle there. See that? The nice thing is there's a lot going on in these places in here, so I don't have to be that perfect, right? There's a lot of out of focus grasses that are blending together and, crissing and crossing. Crisscrossing. That's what I mean to say. So again, I'm just sampling from above and then from below, and I just try and kind of meet those two things in the middle. That being said, this cloning that I'm doing right now, it's not easy. This is difficult. This is like some of the most difficult cloning to do because of what I'm going through with like all the different textures and blending. But it's looking easy watching me, right? But this just comes from years and years and years of practice. If you have some good practice with the cloning, it's not that bad to do this. But if you don't have a lot of good practice with the clone tool and you go to try and do this, it's probably going to end up being a bit of a blotchy mess, So it's nothing against you. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just simply getting a lot of practice where to sample from and where to paint to, how much opacity to use, how often you make a brush stroke, how big or small you make the brush. All of these things really, see, that was not really good. All of these things kind of come into play when you're doing this sort of cloning. And so like now I'm getting a bigger brush and I'm going to start taking from other bigger areas nearby. And it also is like I kind of work my way into some areas based on the content that's there and what I know I want to get rid of and how I know best to get rid of it. And I'm telling you guys, this is from decades of experience of doing this, that it makes it look easier. If, however, you're able to follow along and do something very similar, then that's great. Then that means you've really figured out cloning and you're working well at it. But if you're one of those people that just kind of struggle doing this and making it look good or doing it at all like how I'm doing it, don't be down on yourself. It's not just you. It's a lot of people I work with that kind of thing is hard to do. So now I zoom out and just make sure I didn't leave any weird artifacts or patterns anywhere. And there we go. So check this out. Here's the goal. You turn that on and off. It should simply look like that thing disappears and nothing else much around it changed, right? We don't want a big whole background change. We just want that thing to go away. And it did for the most part. All right, so I'm going to come over to this one because this spot is just bugging me a little bit. It's just a little bright, so I'm just going to kind of mellow that out a little bit. Again, not getting rid of it. We're just trying to kind of mellow it out. So real low opacity, big soft brush. Any of these really bright spots like that, I'm just going to kind of tone them down just a little bit. I know there are flowers back there, but there we go. That's looking much better. So what else do we have to do with this? Not much. I mean, the bird's standing out great. We got great light in the eye, beautiful catch light. I don't feel like there's anything else I have to do to that. Normally I would just dodge up the head and burn down everything else, but I already did that in Lightroom. So I think we're good to go. It's just getting that removal stuff there. And I like that the bottom's a little bit lighter and sort of fades up there. So not the most ideal background. I would have preferred a background a touch further away, but that's not where the bird was. And I certainly couldn't move. And if you watch the shoot, I was impatient because I did move to some of those areas where the background would have been better. And I got impatient and lazy and couldn't stay put. So anyway, here's our image, our original on the right. You can see that blue magenta cast overall. And then we got a nice clean white balance on the left. Bird stands out way more. We cleaned it up a good bit there. All right, this might be my favorite image from the morning. I'm really happy that I figured this one out and saw this potential, anticipated some behavior, and was able to get this shot. So first things first, this is an Eastern Kingbird. They are black and white, not blue. So let's start with that. I'm just going to actually grab the white balance tool, click right on the bird. There we go. Completely neutral. He is now nice and white. There's no blue on the bird. And genuinely, this is more the color of the background. That's how it looked to me in person. The sun was hitting this background. It was like these dead, distant trees on the opposite shoreline. They were very brownish yellow, kind of orangey like this. And it was, I don't want to say early morning sun, but early-ish, so there's still a little color to it. And that looks really good. And this is a nice warm green in the foreground. This is all foreground stuff I was shooting through. So this section is a little bright up here. And then we just want to lighten the bird out of that. So I'm going to, let's do a linear on the top. I just had to decide which one of those I wanted to work. So linear right up there, something like that. We'll subtract out the subject. We do not want to darken that bird anymore. And then we're just going to drop that exposure. There we go. Maybe even the highlight some. Yep. That's good. And let's see, did it? I feel like it did still darken the... Yeah, no, I guess not. Okay, good. All right, then we're going to create... we're just going to do an object select. Right over the bird, it should get him quite seamlessly. Apparently it did not. Oops. So let's add another object. And we'll get the whole white part of the bird. That's so funny, it split that up. There we go. That works. Lighten him up. Brighten those highlights, punch the whites up a little bit, and then drop the blacks for contrast. We don't want to wash that bird out. There is a little section on the bottom there that got picked up, so I'm going to subtract with a linear. We'll just fade it off into the belly there a little bit and make it look good just like that. I'm going to do a crop. I'm just going to get rid of the brightest yellowy orange at the bottom there because I'd like that bottom to kind of anchor darker. And then one more linear on this corner to just kind of bring that down and maybe cool it off a little bit so it matches some of these tones right here. All right, looking great. Let's open this up in Photoshop. Couple more tweaks there. I think we can do a little bit more dodging and burning. So let's start with a burn. Let's take it down. I kind of like it all sort of darker and richer like that. But that's too much on the bird. It looks fine on the perch there. So grab my paintbrush. I'm going to paint with black. And then we're just going to take it off of the bird here, mainly on the white parts of the bird and on the head, right, where I really want to see that eye standing out. I actually hit the background, which I didn't want to do there. And we'll get those little white tips on the feathers there too, which is kind of fun. Let's see if we can get a little bit more catch light on that eye. So curves adjustment layer. Lighten that up a good bit. Drop the blacks. Invert that. Command I, Control I on Windows. And now we switch to white. So press X on the keyboard. It switches my foreground color to white. And then we pop that eye out of there. Nice. That looks good. That is it. Oh, you know what? This section right here is a little dark. Light. So one more curves adjustment layer. Darken that down. Invert it. Big soft brush. Just paint that in right there. Just for consistency's sake there, we keep it kind of even. Hit that spot. Hit there. Maybe up there a little bit. Yeah, I don't like how that got too dark. And there we go. Before, after, nice change in Photoshop. Let's check on the original on that and compare it. The main difference we're going to see is a brightness difference. So we did mess with like brightness and contrast and make that bird stand out a little bit more, but the color, the original white balance on that being auto was just whacked. You know, so there we go. Look at that. Bird stands out so much more accurate colors. These greens and orangey browns in the background were what I saw to my eye there, and I just love the texture and the lighting. And so I'm really glad and happy that worked out. Now, one thing I just want to mention, the use of or lack of use of auto white balance. So I use auto white balance all the time because it's one of the easiest things to change in post. That being said, there are some people that use manual white balance. There's nothing wrong with that. But in my opinion, you're probably going to be changing it all the time anyway. And so I know a lot of people that are just like, you know what, I just leave it on cloudy white balance. That way it gives me nice warm tones all the time, even when it's really sunny. And while that's true, when it's sunny, when you actually have sun color like this, it's probably going to be too yellowy orange, like too much. And so you're going to have to back off of that. You're going to have to tweak it and fix it in post anyway, right? If you're shooting in heavy shade, it's going to be off. If you're shooting in a lot of green, it's going to be off. So anytime you pick a manual white balance and just stick with it, a bunch of the time you're going to have to change it anyway. And so for me, I'm just like, I'll leave it on auto. I know I'm probably going to have to change it anyway. And at least auto in general, other than like this one is pretty far off, it gets you close enough. And so the reason I like it is it looks better through the viewfinder, especially with these mirrorless cameras when you are seeing live what it actually looks like, the color. If you're on a completely wrong white balance, it can really look very different than what's in front of your eye. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So whatever works for you in the end, but I just want to give you a little bit of thinking behind why I choose what I do. And there's our final image. All right, it's Bobcat time. So bit of distractions on the left, on the right. I want to zero in on this. I'm going to crop in a good bit on this and then just try to calm down everything else, make the cat stand out a little bit more, see what we can get here. White balance is off. He's definitely too pink and magenta. So let's start with the crop. Basically, I'm just looking to get rid of that crap on the right side and that bright stuff on the left side there. And by crap, I just mean the stuff that's getting really lit. I don't want to go much lower with the composition because then it's going to be all bright down there. I also don't love that brightness up there, so maybe we'll just get rid of that a little bit more. Still a scenic shot, right? I'm going to go even more. This is a heavy crop, but thanks to the resolution, right? All right, let's get rid of that magenta. There we go. We'll warm it up just a little bit. There's a much more accurate and better white balance right there. Look at that. Before, after. Okay? So nice warm greens. Everything's nice and rich. All right, I'm just going to darken the exposure overall, drop the highlights. Then we're going to do a object select. The cat is not tack sharp either on this one, but again, he's so small in frame, who cares? All right, we're going to lighten him up, drop those blacks. See the difference that blacks makes? Watch. Without it, all washed out. With it, fits right back in the scene. I am just going to do my standard subtract with a linear, fade it in. I'm going to add another radial right down here, just try and darken that foreground patch a bit. Another radial over on this side just to darken that sunny spot just a bit. And then one more radial up there. Kind of angle it to fit. And then we're just going to drop highlights and whites on that to tone that down. So before, after, our cat stands out quite a bit more. Let's throw one more radial right smack on his face there. And just see if we can kind of brighten that up a bit. And then again, just drop those blacks to maintain contrast. So now we've gone from there to there. That last one was a little bit too much, so I'm just going to back off of that amount overall to fade it back in. That looks pretty good. All right, into Photoshop we go. I don't have much to do. I'll do a little bit of burning and stuff. You know, I should have cropped out this in focus thing there. Let's do that. Let's come back into Lightroom here. We'll just come in off of that top corner. There we go. That's better. Cleans up that edge. Now we can go into Photoshop. Let's do a little bit more burning. Curves adjustment layer, darken it down, invert that mask, so Command I. We're going to grab our paintbrush, make sure we're painting with white, lower opacity. I do like a 30 to 50 range. If it's not doing as much as you want, increase that opacity or just paint over it multiple times. There we go. We're done. I think the left side of the cat's face is a little too light. So actually, let me use some of this light burning on that. Yeah, that just feels better. It was just looking like a bit absurd there. And there we go. Oh, you know what? One little thing I noticed. We'll make a new blank layer right above the background there. And then we're just going to grab our clone stamp tool there. Make sure it's on all layers. Sample right up here. Just get rid of that bright brown thing down there. And then we're good to go. All right, let's save it and close it. Don't need to really see the before and after on this. It was just kind of, you know, oh, whatever. Here, I'll show you. It saved faster than I thought. We'll reset that. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice big change there. You can see the cat definitely stands out a lot more, but looks good in the scene there. This is not a great shot. I mean, if this was a species I'd worked with a lot, this would probably be a very mediocre, maybe keep shot. But this is one of the first, this is like the closest I've ever photographed one, the first time I ever saw one in New Jersey. So I'm going to hang on to it, edit it up as best I can, and probably never share it, other than with you guys. Thanks. Let's do this last photo. All right, folks, last photo here. Basically looking to crop this out and not much else. I'm just going to brighten the bird ever so slightly, and then I do want to just try and clean up in Photoshop the bill there. I did shoot this with some negative exposure compensation, so I made the background a little bit darker overall, which is good. So let's start with the crop. We'll just come in off of this side, get rid of that extra twiggy thing there. That looks really good. This should be easy. Watch. Pop the highlights. It makes the bird stand out a little bit more. The bird seems just a little green, I would say. So let's do a quick object select on him. Something like that should rough it out and do it. There we go. And then we just go a little bit more magenta with it. And let's try just a little bit more pop on the exposure. There we go. Now he's really standing out. All right, into Photoshop we go to fix this up. Finish it up, I should say. Doesn't need a ton of fixing, but some stuff has to happen here. We're going to new blank layer. Clone tool. We're going to go in here, sample up here. Make sure your sample is on all layers there. We're going to paint that out right there and everything below him there. And then there's a few things down here I want to fix up. For this, however, I'm just going to use the spot healing brush. Make sure it's on content aware and sample all layers. That bright one right there, I just want to get rid of that. We'll get rid of that one and then go right through there. And then lastly, we'll come right through there and we'll keep that brush like that. Or branch is what I meant to say. All right, back to this. We got to bring his bill back. So we're going to add a layer mask right here. That's going to let us define what part of this image is visible or not. I'm going to grab the brush tool, make sure my brush is roughly 80% hardness, and we're going to paint with black first. So we're just going to paint the sharp edge of the bird back there. And here where I can't see what's happening, I'm going to go beyond it. So paint a whole bunch of black, and then I'll press X on the keyboard, switch my foreground color to white, and now I can see the edge of the bill. And then we'll just kind of paint that back in right where it's supposed to be. I think it's something just about like that. And there we go. Now just, I mean, it's far enough away, but watch this little bit. Watch how much more busy it is up in there in that bill. That branch just kind of makes it like slightly more messy in there. And then we cleaned up those couple of twigs in the bottom right-hand corner. And we are done. Close and save that one. Don't need to show you the before and after on this. There's barely a change there. Shot this one with a really good exposure, kind of how I wanted it, and closely composed to how I wanted it. So let's just take a look at all the final images from this outing. Now that we have them all edited up, some of them certainly better than the others, but I feel overall I got some creative stuff here and some things that I'm really happy with. This silhouette turned out really cool. I originally intended to shoot it that way and did shoot it that way. That was my original intent with the edit. But hey, silhouette worked out cool. I do really love the foreground texture for that one. That high key is fun. This high key is okay, but it's an orchard oriole. It's a bird I don't get to work with often. Kingbird here, kind of okay. Love the deer, love the deer. Great behavioral shot, and then probably my most favorite creative shot from the set. Fine shot, you know? But look, nice variety from a couple of hours out one morning, walking around in spring where there's a ton of birds and obviously other wildlife. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And I'm going to try my best to get a few more of these done for you guys for in the spring here, and get out some more songbirds and more wildlife in the spring. It'll be fun.